Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this legal webinar run by Kaizen Synergy Law Firm. My name is Nihal Samara. I'm the General Counsel and Legal Director here at Kaizen Synergy. I'd like to welcome you all to today's session. Today's session is run from our Governance, Risk, Legal Compliance and Policy Centre based at Trobe Law School, where we actually train students coming through La Trobe Law School in the area of policy, incident reports, NDIS standards, and other compliance requirements too. So I'd like to welcome you all to today's session. Today's session focuses on the NDIS reporting for incident management, and we'll focus on the legal compliance obligations. A number of people have actually reached out to us over the last few days and asked us a number of questions in relation to their NDIS reporting or challenges that they've had. And we'll look at actually addressing some of these within the webinar session that I'm running today. Now, on this, the other resource that I will just mention to you that you all do have access to after today's session is the Gemba 360 Legal Compliance Dashboard. And this NDIS Legal Resources Dashboard is open for people to access. You can simply access this by going to our site, gemba360.com, and a big blue circle like the one you can see in front of you will appear. After you've clicked on this link, the big blue circle will appear. You will be able to use your email address, and we will send you an individual temporary password for you to access this demo site. Now, the reason that I show you this in particular is that all of the legal resources, including the recording of this webinar that I'm walking you through today on. This webinar is being recorded all the way up to the question and answer part of the session where we will open up the phone lines, and more than happy to stay online and answer any questions that people might have. Also, we will have the policy document that will be posted on the notice board that you can see here on your left-hand side, along with the recording of the webinar and other resources. The other part that we will refer you to is also other NDIS providers do use this dashboard. It is widely used across the sector, and as part of this, it allows you to have a look at the incident form that is being used by providers, and I will come back to this during the session. So you can actually have a look at a template incident form and how it's actually being used by other NDIS providers. We have also used this as part of, or it has been used as part of an audit to support agencies that have recently gone through their audits, and they've passed with flying colours in this space. So it is a resource that is there, and this is how we will actually send out copies of all of the legal webinar resources, covering both the recording of the webinar, policies, and other documents for you to access. So that being said, welcome to you all, and thank you for joining us today. Now, I do encourage, if you do have any questions as we go through, to actually ask us questions as we go through. You do have the question panel at the bottom of your screen, and you can ask us these as we go through today's session. So today's session really focuses on the NDIS requirements for incident reporting. We're going to look at a policy document to actually put this into operation requirements for you. We're going to look at what a reportable incident is, how you identify types of incidents, how you report an incident, and of course, open this up to questions and contact. Now, just to jump through to I'll say the resources that are available. One of the things we do have available, which I will bring this up, is an incident report, an incident management policy. This incident management policy is now in front of your screen, and this covers all of the webinar information that I'm going to talk to you about. It covers what the scope is, what the NDIS requirements are, what the legal compliance obligations are for your agency, as well as what the responsibilities and who should be responsible for this, what the procedure is too, and also refers to specific pages in the NDIS manuals and system guidelines, right down to specific pages that you need if you want to access those, and with ongoing links. The other parts that we've also got is specific timelines in terms of when you need to report incidents and what the process is into the NDIS Commission as well too, in terms of even looking at resolution step 1 through to 9. So it is a policy document that I will also return back to you today, following as part of this legal webinar. So the other part of this session, as where we sit as a law firm too, we do advise NDIS providers in terms of incident reporting and all other NDIS standards. We work with auditors to support agencies where non-conformance may have occurred, and also assist agencies like yourselves in actually preparing for audits too. So in terms of this space, this is what I'm seeing our bread and butter, if you like, in terms of the works that we do. And this is what we actually train students here at La Trobe Law School who are wanting to go and work as in-house corporate counsels in the future, or policy officers too. So, an introduction. Part of disability support is safety, accountability, and care. This presentation introduces the incident management policy, as well as specific legal compliance obligations that your agency needs to follow. We have had a question just coming through in terms of incident reporting. We will actually be extending this webinar due to the number of agencies that have registered for this. And we will actually, next session in 2 weeks' time, actually run through a specific incident that comes out. And you'll actually be able to lodge an incident using a QR code. We'll actually be able to look at this live for you. But what we wanted to look at today was specifically the legal compliance rules and obligations that providers like yourselves need to follow. So as part of the policy that we have is to look at ensuring that your incident management policy applies to all staff, participants, and contractors affiliated with your company. And that's important to be aware of. So if you have maintenance providers and other organizations, then there is an obligation that they actually fulfill your NDIS incident reporting obligations. So this applies to all staff, participants, and contractors that are linked to your agency. So one of the issues that we see and challenges that occur for NDIS providers is the definitions on what a reportable incident actually is. So for an incident to become a reportable incident, it must satisfy the following 2 legal requirements. The incident must be defined as a reportable incident under 73Z, Section 4 of the Act, and Section 16 of the NDIS Incident Management and Reportable Incident Rules. The incident must have occurred or be alleged to have occurred in connection with the provision of supports or the services that you are providing services to. So it is important that you be aware of what these obligations are. In terms of what a reportable incident is to the NDIS Commission, well, this can involve death of a person with a disability, serious injury or abuse or neglect of a person, or unlawful sexual physical contact or sexual misconduct, or the use of restrictive practice in relation to a person with a disability, other than where the use is in accordance with an authorized or however described state or territory behaviour support plan. Now, under this, it's also important that the behaviour support plans, you may need to also get specific directives from relevant tribunals in certain states and territories. We're aware that in a number of states where this is important, agencies need to actually acquire authorizations which may be required under chemical restraints or the likes, that they do seek tribunal directives too. So and how do you identify the types of incidents? Well, incidents can be identified in various ways. They might be witnessed by a worker, disclosed by a person with a disability, or reported by someone else. It's important that all staff know how to respond when an incident occurs, including reporting and recording it appropriately. Now, these slides are designed that you can actually take these and use these within your agency too. So the idea of this is to then look at, which we will now, the different types of incident categories or types. So we do have physical abuse, we do have sexual abuse, we have psychological abuse, domestic violence, and also neglect as a number of categories that need to be considered. It also covers financial abuse as well. And also, importantly, these incidents need to be reported to the NDIS. Now, under each of these sections, when we look at these in some detail, what organizations tend to miss is that there could be a number of behavioral indicators and physical signs. And we have actually defined these in specific categories. Now, when we go back and actually have a look at our incident report system, what is important is that you actually look at these types of incidents and identify which are the areas that you should need to cover. So if we just jump back to, and I'm going to jump between the legal requirements and also the operational requirements that your agency needs to meet. So if we look at the incident form here, what you'll find is that if I click on new entry, and you can actually use this demo site to actually test this out and have a look to see how it works. Now, under each of these sections, one of the areas that we have set out is the specific question, does this involve the following? And what type of incident was it? Now, importantly, what we then have is a question, and thank you, Catherine, for asking the question. We will flag this and come to it shortly. We do encourage you to ask questions. Thank you, Catherine. We will come to it shortly. So what we have done under this, and this is from I'll call it a legal operational point. We have actually asked this question seemingly twice. What is the type of incident, which is these sections here that I've just covered off? And also, does this involve any of the following? What we found is that sometimes people won't answer these particular category-based questions, whether it be physical abuse or financial abuse or the likes. But what they will actually answer is different specific definitions of what these could actually include. And the reason we have this here is that automatically, if this question is answered, the line manager will actually identify specific and be notified specifically about this. So when we jump back to the legal definitions, and I'll just bring this back to you here, what we want to see is sometimes staff won't actually class it as physical abuse if there are inconsistent, vague, unexpected, or unlikely explanation for an injury. They'll pass them off as just an issue that they've actually got. So that's why when we go through and look at either physical abuse or be it overly compliant with workers, we'll actually expand these texts out. And the same thing goes for even sexual abuse. Sometimes it comes down to interpretation of what people actually want to see. Now, we will just return to the questions on this just to make sure that we get these answered. So we can see here that Catherine has just asked, and I'll just read this out without for providing people's surnames or the like. If a participant contacts the support worker saying she feels unwell and wants to go to hospital, and the support worker takes her, but then the participant leaves and the emergency department and is not seen and asks support worker to take her home, is this a reportable incident? So essentially, if the requirements are met under this particular categories here of is there an unexpected, inconsistent, vague, or unexplained injury, or bruises or burns, and what the reason was, Catherine, for why they were taken to the hospital in the first place. If it fits one of these particular descriptions here of what I'm showing you here, then we would classify that as an incident itself that is being reported. I will add the fact that they're leaving the emergency department and is not seen, then that still doesn't mean that the incident report it shouldn't actually be either registered on your incident report system, or alternatively that this shouldn't be reported. I will add, if I just jump back to this screen here for 1 minute, here we go here. One of the things that we do see on this is within the sections where we have, and I'll just bring up the form here, Catherine, the section here, in terms of nature injury, or if there's a description of what's actually happened earlier on. What we find is that agencies will often not use the incident system because it's not a reportable incident. And what we mean by that is it's important that when you actually use your incident report system, that you actually identify what the reason was or what the details of the incident was. So what you just described there, Catherine, should actually be copied and registered in your incident report. Now, there may well be reasons why, in terms of something as simple as, if I bring this up, for example, what happened. And in this section here, operationally, we say this is where you actually would place the information of what happened, exactly what you've spoken to me about. And if I was to bring this up, then this is where we would actually place this information in and what the reason was that you didn't report it. So essentially, you've got your incident reports being covered within your organization. Francis has just asked, in the portal you demonstrated, how does the worker assess the risk ratings? Are there criteria descriptions that indicate low, medium, or high? Yes, you're right, Francis. So on this one, this is just an example of one that we have. The idea of the incident reports, and I can show you, we will just jump into another one. What ranks this as medium or high is essentially what are the way in which the questions are being asked. So we do have some portals where agencies have actually asked us, and I will just jump into this for you, just for explanation purposes. Some of you may have seen this type of dashboard whereby we actually, and I will just bring this in, where we equally have an incident matrix listed by this, Francis. I think that's what you're talking about. So sometimes organizations will want their own staff to rate the incidents based on low, medium, or high, and it's based on a specific consequence example of what's going on. What we found, and this is the other part of this system that you can actually, and we can set this up for you if that's the way you want to go. But equally, what we have done, Francis, for agencies that are using this, and it has worked well for auditors, is we're moving them away from high, medium, or low grid questions to actually triggering what are the answers to questions that they're actually asking. So in this case, it becomes a high incident automatically, and staff are notified because of it is identified as what type of incident is this. If it's a domestic violence or financial abuse or the likes, then that automatically triggers it to be a high incident. If it is an abuse or obviously a death of a person, again, a high incident. If there is something that requires unlawful sexual or physical contact, then again, this is where the risk rating triggers up as well too. So there are things that you do need to look at and things that we do cover off as well too for you. So it is something that is there. We are quite happy to keep on answering questions as we go through this session. So when we look at other descriptions of this, then this is where we do have this coming through. I also see that Abby's just raised, sometimes staff think we have to report to the commission if family member is upset or a reportable incident. Can you clarify this? Thank you, Abby. So with this, let me just clarify this part. And it is a very, very good question that Abby has raised. And I will just adjust the microphone for you too. So on this, there is parts of this that if a family member is if their family member is suspected of a reportable, if do we have to report to the commission if a family member is suspect of a reportable incident? Can you clarify? So if there is a suspicion of this, now I will just pause this slide because this could be under psychological abuse, for example. Now, one of the legal, one on our dashboard comes back to the legal resources that are here. So sometimes this may not come through as an incident, but might start off as a comment, compliment, or feedback that's come through. So one of the buttons that you have here allows people, or to be staff or participants or family members, to lodge a complaint, suspect, or feedback. So this is where you can actually get and gather information into the comment, compliment, or feedback, and you might want to investigate the outcome. Now, in Abby's case, where there's a suspected issue that comes out, this is where you can identify and review either a comment that a participant has made. It may not be it may not be an incident that you consider at first. And then after the investigation, after you've identified that immediate reaction is required, then that's where you say, after investigation, we are now completing an incident form. So you've got the step through process, Abby, to ensure that you're moving from a suspected issue, and I'll just check my spell checks for this, moving from a comment or question or feedback into an incident form that you can see here. And it might be that on this incident form where there may be a suspected issue that's come through, essentially you're dealing with this, and it might actually be that no other action is required, but it is something that you do need to investigate. Now, on this, if we then have with our session, looking at the different types of incident and also whether it involves domestic violence, if there's neglect, these are all definitions taken directly from the NDIS rules and regulations. And I will add that if you are looking at this, then we will also, this is where it does match back to the relevant standards that you are seeing. So we do see these specific requirements under, for example, incident management. If you do look at the NDIS under the rules and requirements, and here we are here, I've just laid out the specific core modules. And what we have done within this session and presentation materials is actually look at the specific requirements under incident management. And this is also then reflected in the policy document that I'm about to show you. So essentially, I'm also can see with this that essentially we do say that you need to report this incident where it does involve a family member of suspected abuse or neglect or the likes. It is a requirement that you do need to see that essentially we do need to manage these requirements in terms of the NDIS reporting. So that is something that does need to be looked at in terms of the work that support coordinators do. In terms of how you report an incident, and I think this is where we're now leading with some of the questions, and Bihesh has just I'm a bit confused. Is this about the incident management or reportable incidents to the NDIS? So essentially, Behesh, it's a good question. So the internal incident management system and also reportable incidents, they're not divided into two separate sections here. A lot of agencies, one leads to the other. So what we find in terms of incident reportings for you, what you need to consider, and this is what we will just come to, and let me just jump through this. So I am just going to jump through a few slides here. So essentially what we need to look at here is a workflow. There are some incidents that will actually be involved within your agency itself. And there are then those that will then lead to a reportable incident that comes out for your agency as an NDIS provider. So essentially, there are some incidents that may actually come through because they meet the requirements of the legislation. They fit under the types of incidents that you need to report on. So, for example, physical, sexual, psychological, domestic violence, neglect, or financial. And there may be some incidents that are completely outside this that are internal. So that might involve incidents just involving staff that's occurring. Um, for example, someone spilled a cup of coffee that isn't reportable to the NDIS because it involves services that doesn't meet these requirements, but it is something that your agency needs to cover off. So it is something that you do need to consider as part of this. So how you report it as part of this process is that it is then linked out and you can report this through Proda of how you actually register these incidents. The other part that I will add to is which we do use for agencies, when you are reporting an incident, we also take the additional step, and we've advised agencies to do this, of where a breach has occurred and what the actions taken were. It also means then that the actions taken will result in how your organization itself has actually then managed this incident. So this actually allows you to then manage these incidents directly from your agency. Now, looking at the workflow of this and going through, this is what agencies tend to miss as part of their incident report. We need to look at the details of the incident or allegation, what happened, and that addresses Catherine's question right at the start. And Bahesh's question in terms of is it an incident or are we not registered under the NDIS? Does the incident have to be reported by both provider and support coordinator? No. So under the NDIS, you can use this directly as your agency that's making the report. There are key things that should be in this incident report: the impact, whether the incident is reportable, the date, the time, and the names of the information. You may also want to consider also what we find really useful, whether there's any other agencies that need to be informed, whether it's child safety, whether it's NDI, whether it's the police, whether it's work cover or the others. And then this covers through in terms of your reporting obligations. So you'll find that under our policy, just to bring it back to here, that these steps and the resolution in terms of what happens is then covered as part of this process for you. It covers the actual policy, then covers what is the reportable incidents covered by, that were asked by Bahesh and Catherine. What is the categories that need to follow, as well as what are the timelines that needs to be completed by. And we've got the table of what the timelines are listed here. From here, what we also then have is what is the process in terms of informing workers about your incident management system. So as part of this, what incidents are reportable versus what incidents are not, this essentially is listed all within this policy document. Now, how this appears, which is important for yourselves to see, is when we look at specifically the incident report form on the dashboard. And I say this because this is what other NDIS providers use. We've seen this work and they've gone through this with auditors this year. And from time to time, we'll actually make changes across the system based on what auditors have requested. Sometimes agencies will even, and auditors will ask for policies within the form itself. So when people actually open the policy, open the incident form up, what they will find is a sample of the actual policy that they want to see in here. And so this is where you can actually embed your own policy documents and allow people to be able to view the policy directly from your own access and system. So if we bring this up, for example, and I'll just bring this up here, where people may have a policy document, often they get confused on what is the specific policies that they want to see. So this is where you can actually embed the policy documents and view these within your agency's scope. And this is just a sample of one that has been listed on here. What's important for your incident reports? When you go through and asked us for incident reports, thank you, Catherine. I can see you have another question which we will come to in terms of using the incident register. So what we do have is the incident report should assist you meet not only your NDIS standards and compliance obligations, but also your legal compliance requirements as well too, and minimize those. So what is important when we look at the workflows, look at the standards, look at the specific reporting requirements that is required under the NDIS, what we see is these key requirements that your agency needs to meet. These key requirements from a compliance side is then listed as part of this process. So when Catherine asked about continuous improvement and comments and feedback coming through, how do you manage these requirements? Are all workers trained in compliance with relation to your policy and incident report? So this is where this is actually covered within your policy document that we can circulate out to you, and also that your agency minimizes these requirements based on key criteria that your agency needs to follow. As also asked by, which I'm glad that AB has asked this question, in terms of Francis, in terms of notifications, again, this is based on the risk matrix that either is answered by people's questions and what is actually being met. So if it fills into one of these number of criteria, it becomes a reportable incident that your agency needs to follow. What you will need to do is back it up with what have you done to action this. So once a staff member fills this out, what you do need to do is have the ability to then go in and action what have you actually done. And it is the action plan that organizations need to follow as part of this process. So within this scope, what we do have for you is it's important that you do follow the workflow that we have within this webinar. Have a look at the resources and policies. In 2 weeks' time, we are going to run a follow-up incident reporting session, which will allow you, it is going to be run on the 9th of September. What this will allow you to do is actually lodge an incident report using a QR code, and we can actually walk through this in the live webinar for you. With this, if you do have any questions, please reach out to us via our email. You can call us, or alternatively, you can visit us for those that are based here in Melbourne. That being said, we will reach out to all of you today. If you do have any questions, by all means, contact us and happy to answer any questions that you might have. We will just stop the recording. Thank you all for joining us. More than happy to stay online and answer any questions that you might have.